The whole time you knew what she was doing. I knew what she was capable of. I did not know you would be the one standing in her way. And if I had not been, then I would have lost everything that mattered, which, as it turns out, was you. 3 times in 14 days, Selena Clay should have walked away from Gyuseok Gye. The first was when he showed up at her door at 2 a.m., soaked through from a rainstorm that had rolled in off the Han River, with nothing but the clothes on his back and a name that made building security go pale. The second was when she learned exactly what that name meant in Seoul. The third was when his second-in-command offered her $200,000 to disappear, and she understood, with perfect clarity, that saying no might cost her more than money. She said no anyway. What happens when a 29-year-old electrician from New Orleans, a woman who cleans the building she cannot afford to live in, opens her door to a 24-year-old Korean crime boss who has just been erased from his own empire in a single night? What happens when she looks at him and says the 4 words that will change both of their lives? You can stay. Stay with this one. Because the knock on her door is only the beginning. By the end of this story, Selena will stand in a wine cellar 41 floors above Seoul while fireworks crack somewhere over the river, and she will watch a woman she has never met try to destroy the only man who ever saw her clearly. She will have exactly 1 chance to stop it. And she will make a choice that has nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with the kind of person she decided to be a long time ago, in a house in Treme where her grandmother did hair out of the kitchen for the whole street. This story does not end the way you think it will. If you have ever let someone in when every reasonable part of you said to keep the door closed, drop a comment and tell me what made you do it. I read every single one. If you are new here, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story will be even harder to walk away from. Now, let me tell you how it started. 3 weeks before that night. Selena Clay was 29 years old, 5'6", and 47 minutes into a shift that should have ended at midnight. The service elevator smelled like industrial cleaner and the particular staleness of a building that never fully slept. She had her cart, her mop, her bucket of gray water that needed changing 2 floors ago. She had the ache in her lower back that came from bending over bathroom tiles for 6 hours straight. She had a degree in electrical engineering from Tulane and a residential electrician's license that meant nothing in a country where she could not read the certification exams. What she did not have was the $1,800 a month it would cost to live in the building she cleaned. The Mirai Tower rose 52 floors above Sinsadong, all glass and brushed steel, and the kind of understated wealth that did not need to announce itself. Selena had been inside 31 of those floors. She knew which executives left coffee rings on mahogany desks and which ones wiped down their own surfaces before she arrived. She knew the smell of the 38th floor, which was old paper and something faintly floral, and the smell of the 41st, which was cork and temperature-controlled air and money so quiet it barely made a sound. She did not know yet that the 41st floor belonged to Gyuseok Gye. She would learn. Her grandmother used to say that a woman's hands told her whole story. Selena's hands had calluses from wire strippers and the faint chemical roughness that came from industrial cleaning solutions. They had held her brother's face when he could not find the words to tell her what was wrong. They had learned to read the smallest movements, the slightest tension. Because Marcus never spoke, and Selena had spent 9 years becoming fluent in everything he said without sound. Those hands pushed the cart onto the 41st floor at 12:47 a.m. The wine cellar was supposed to be empty. It was not. A man stood at the far wall, his back to her, one hand pressed flat against the glass that looked out over Seoul. He was tall, lean in the way of someone who had trained his body for precision rather than bulk. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt untucked, and there was something in his posture that made Selena stop the cart before it could squeak against the polished floor. She knew how to read stillness. 9 years with Marcus had taught her that. This was not the stillness of someone at peace. This was the stillness of someone holding himself together with nothing but discipline and the thinnest edge of will. She should have backed out. She should have taken the cart to the service elevator and come back in an hour or 2 hours, or not at all. The protocol for occupied executive spaces was clear. Return when vacant, note the time, move on. Instead, she said, "The water damage in the northeast corner. You know about that?" He turned. Gyuseok Gye was 24 years old, though Selena would not learn that until later. What she saw in that moment was a face that had been designed for magazine covers and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. Dark eyes that moved across her face with an attention so focused it felt almost physical. He catalogued her in 3 seconds flat. The cleaning uniform, the work-roughened hands, the way she stood with her weight balanced, ready to move in any direction. "You are not afraid of me," he said. It was not a question. Should I be? Most people are. Most people have probably seen your face before. Selena let that land, then added, "I'm from New Orleans. I don't know your face." Something shifted in his expression. Not a smile. Closer to the ghost of interest where there had been nothing but flat, controlled blankness before. "The water damage," he said. "Show me." She should not have. She was a cleaner, not a building manager, not an engineer, not anyone whose job it was to walk a strange man through structural concerns at 1 a.m. But her hands remembered wire and conduit, remembered the way humidity could eat through insulation over months and years, and her mouth was already moving. "Northeast corner, behind the 3rd rack. You can smell it if you get close. The seal on the window casing is failing. Another 6 months and you will have mold in the wall." He crossed the room to where she pointed, crouched down, pressed his palm to the wall and held it there for 4 seconds, then 5, then 6. When he stood, his hand was faintly damp. "You are an electrician," he said. Selena went still. Your hands, the calluses, and you looked at the seam between the casing and the wall before you looked at the water stain itself. You were tracing the path of the leak, not the evidence of it. "I cleaned the building," she said, carefully. "You cleaned the building," he agreed. "But that is not what you are." He looked at her then with something she could not name. Not pity, not curiosity. Something closer to recognition, as if he understood exactly what it meant to be one thing while the world insisted you were another. "What is your name?" "Selena Clay." "Selena Clay." He said it like he was memorizing it, like it mattered. "I will remember that." 3 days later, he was gone. Selena heard about it the way everyone heard about things in the Mirai Tower. Through the whispered conversations of security guards and the carefully blank faces of executive assistants who suddenly had nothing to do. Gyuseok Gye had left the country on business. He had been expected back in 72 hours. He had not returned. His accounts had been frozen. His access codes had been revoked. His name had been quietly removed from the directory in the lobby, the gold letters pried off so cleanly you could barely see where they had been. The woman who did it was named Emily Mendez. Selena saw her for the first time on the 38th floor in the office that had belonged to someone else a week before. American, mid-30s. The kind of beauty that looked expensive because it was. She wore a gray silk blouse and heels that cost more than Selena made in a month, and she smiled at the security team with the practiced warmth of someone who had learned early that likability was a weapon. "The transition will be seamless," Emily was saying. "Mr. Gye's absence is temporary, of course, but the board has asked me to ensure continuity. I'm sure you understand." The security chief nodded. He did not look like he understood. He looked like a man who had been told to stand down and was choosing not to ask questions. Emily's eyes moved to Selena, who was emptying a wastebasket near the door. The gaze lasted 2 seconds, long enough to dismiss her completely, long enough to decide that a woman in a cleaning uniform was furniture, was wallpaper, was nothing worth cataloging at all. Selena had been looked through her whole life. It had never stopped her from seeing. She saw the way Emily's hands moved when she spoke, always reaching, always pulling focus. She saw the tightness at the corners of Emily's mouth when someone mentioned Gyuseok Gye's name, a tension that had nothing to do with concern for his well-being. She saw the stack of documents on the desk, contracts with signatures still wet, dates that preceded Gyuseok's departure by weeks. Emily Mendez had not moved fast when opportunity arose. Emily Mendez had planned this. The question was why. The question was what Gyuseok Gye had that she wanted badly enough to take it while he was 6,000 miles away. The question was whether any of it was Selena's business at all. It was not. She took the wastebasket to her cart. She finished the floor. She clocked out at 1:23 a.m. and took the subway to the apartment she shared with two other women, a space so small she could touch both walls of her bedroom with her arms outstretched. She lay in the dark and thought about the man in the wine cellar, the way he had looked at her like she was worth remembering. 11 days later, at 2 a.m., someone knocked on her door. The rain had been falling for hours. The kind of rain that came in off the river and settled into everything, soaking through concrete, seeping under doors. Selena was awake because she was always awake at 2 a.m., her body trained to a schedule that had nothing to do with daylight and everything to do with mopping floors when the executives were asleep. She opened the door. Gyuseok Gye stood in the hallway with water streaming from his hair, his clothes plastered to his skin, his face holding the same controlled stillness she had seen in the wine cellar. But there was something underneath it now. Something that looked, if she had to name it, like a man who had finally run out of rooms to retreat to. "They took everything," he said. His voice was hoarse. "I have nowhere else to go." Selena looked at him, 24 years old. Chairman of a golf resort and equipment conglomerate that bore his name. Former professional golfer, which she would learn soon. Owner of the building she cleaned, which she had not known until this moment. A man who could buy the block she grew up on and not notice the expense. Standing in her doorway with nothing but the clothes on his back because a woman named Emily Mendez had erased him from his own life. She should have closed the door. She thought about her grandmother's kitchen in Treme. The women who came through it with their problems and their burdens and their impossible situations. The way her grandmother never asked whether someone deserved help before she gave it. The way she said over and over that a person's worth was not measured by what they had, but by what they did when they had nothing left to lose. Selena stepped back. "You can stay," she said. Gyuseok Gye walked through the door. And 41 floors above them, in a wine cellar that smelled of cork and controlled air and money that barely made a sound, Emily Mendez smiled at nothing in particular and picked up her phone. The first night, he slept on her floor. Selena gave him a blanket that smelled of fabric softener and a pillow from her own bed, and she watched him fold his long frame into the narrow space between her dresser and the wall without complaint. He did not ask for anything. He did not explain. He lay down in his still damp clothes and closed his eyes, and within 4 minutes his breathing had gone slow and even. The breathing of someone who had learned to sleep anywhere because sleep was a resource, and he could not afford to waste it. She sat on the edge of her bed and watched him for longer than she should have. In the morning, he was gone before she woke. There was a note on her dresser in handwriting so precise it looked almost printed. "I will return tonight, if that is acceptable." It should not have been acceptable. She shared the apartment with 2 other women, both of whom worked day shifts and slept at night like normal people. She had a lease that prohibited overnight guests. She had a cleaning job that depended on the goodwill of building management, and the building was owned by the man now sleeping on her floor, except it was not owned by him anymore because a woman named Emily Mendez had taken it. Selena went to work. The Mire Tower felt different that night. Security guards who had nodded at her for months now looked through her the way Emily had looked through her. The service elevator took 47 seconds longer than usual to arrive. When she reached the 38th floor, her cart was not where she had left it. She found it on the 22nd floor, wedged into a supply closet with the wheels removed. It took her 90 minutes to find replacement wheels. It took her another 40 minutes to finish the floors she should have completed in half that time. When she clocked out, the shift supervisor called her into his office and told her, with the particular blankness of someone delivering a message he did not write, that her performance had been noted. Noted by whom? Selena asked. He did not answer. Gyuseok was waiting when she got home. He had changed clothes somehow, a plain white t-shirt and dark pants that fit him like they had been made for his body, which they probably had. He was sitting at her small kitchen table with his hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold. "You found clothes," she said. "I have a contact, someone Emily does not know about yet. Yet. She is thorough." He looked up at her, and something in his expression made her stop in the doorway. "Your supervisor. He called you into his office tonight." Selena went very still. "How do you know that?" "I know the building. I know the people in it. And I know that Emily Mendez does not tolerate anyone who might be helping me." "I'm not helping you. You're sleeping on my floor." To her, that is the same thing. He stood, crossed the small kitchen in 2 steps, and stopped close enough that she could smell rain on his skin, even though the rain had stopped hours ago. Close enough that she could see the faint tremor in his right hand, a barely visible shake that he was holding against his thigh like he could press it into stillness. "You should tell me to leave," he said. "I should. I'm bringing trouble into your life. Emily will find out where I am staying. When she does, she will make things difficult for you. More difficult than tonight." "I know." "Then why are you letting me stay?" Selena thought about Marcus. The way he could not tell her when something was wrong could only show her through the tension in his shoulders and the angle of his hands and the particular stillness of his face. She had spent 9 years learning to read him, learning that what people said was the smallest fraction of what they meant. Gyuseok Gye was saying she should make him leave. His body was saying something else entirely. "Because you're not asking me to," she said. "You're telling me I should. That's different." Something passed across his face, not a smile, closer to wonder. "You are a very unusual woman, Selena Clay. I'm from New Orleans. We're all a little unusual." She moved past him to the counter, close enough that her shoulder brushed his chest. She felt him go still at the contact, a stillness she recognized from Marcus, the stillness of someone who did not know what to do with unexpected touch. She filed that away for later. The second night, he slept on her floor again. But this time, before he lay down, he told her about the tremor. "It ended my career," he said. He was not looking at her. He was looking at his own hand, spread flat on the blanket, the shake visible now that he had stopped trying to hide it. The yips, they called it. A golfer's curse. The more you need your hands to be steady, the less steady they become. "How old were you?" 22. I had won 3 championships. I was supposed to win a dozen more. And then one day, on the 18th hole of a tournament I had already won, my hand began to shake, and it never stopped. Selena sat down on the edge of her bed, close to him now, close enough to reach out and touch, if she wanted to. "Does Emily know?" "Emily knows everything. That is how she took the company. She waited until I was out of the country, then called an emergency board meeting and presented evidence that I had been hiding a degenerative condition, that my leadership was compromised, that my entire brand was built on a lie. Is it degenerative? No." He looked at her then, and his eyes were dark and very tired. "The doctors say it is psychological, stress-induced, that under the right conditions, with the right support, it might even stop. But I have not found the right conditions yet." Selena thought about her grandmother's kitchen. The women who came through it, broken in ways that did not show. The way her grandmother always said that healing was not about fixing what was wrong. It was about finding someone who saw you clearly and did not look away.
She did not say any of that. She said, "The pillow I gave you is too flat. I'll find you a better one tomorrow." Something in his face softened. He slept through the night. On the fourth day, Emily Mendez came for Selena directly. She was waiting in the shift supervisor's office when Selena arrived for work. Gray silk blouse.
Heels that clicked against the floor when she stood. The same practiced smile that had fooled the security team now aimed at Selena like a weapon. "Miss Clay, please, sit down." Selena remained standing. "I understand you've been housing one of our former executives," Emily said. "A generous impulse, I'm sure, but perhaps misguided." "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you do." Emily's smile did not waver. "Gyuseok Gye has been removed from this organization for cause. Anyone found assisting him will be terminated immediately and reported to immigration for violation of their work visa terms." Selena felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her feet. Her work visa. Her legal right to be in this country. Everything she had built in the 2 years since she arrived in Seoul balanced on a single document that Emily Mendez could make disappear with a phone call. "I clean your floors," Selena said. "That's all I do. For now." Emily stood, smoothing her skirt with hands that never trembled. "But I have a proposal for you. A rather generous one, I think. $200,000, Miss Clay. Deposit it into any account you name. All you have to do is leave. Go back to New Orleans. Forget you ever met Gyuseok Gye." The number hung in the air between them. $200,000. Enough to pay off the last of the debt from Marcus's care. Enough to buy a house in Treme and live in it for the rest of her life. Enough to walk away from all of this and never look back. "No," Selena said. Emily's smile finally faltered. "No? No." For 3 seconds, Emily simply looked at her. Then something cold and careful moved behind her eyes, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost its warmth entirely. "I admire loyalty, Miss Clay. I really do. But loyalty to the wrong person is just another word for foolishness. I will give you 48 hours to reconsider. After that, your visa becomes my concern." She walked out. Selena stood alone in the office and breathed through the shaking in her hands. That night, she told Gyuseok about the meeting. She told him about the $200,000 and the threat to her visa and the way Emily had looked at her like she was already gone. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Why did you say no?" "Because she asked me to." "That is not an answer." "It's the only answer I have." He looked at her across the small kitchen table, his damaged hand resting on the surface between them. The tremor was visible tonight, a constant small shaking that he had stopped trying to hide from her. "There is a woman," he said, "my grandmother. She lives in a monastery on the south coast, near a fishing village where my family has roots. She has not spoken in 11 years, not since my grandfather died. But she sees everything. She knows everything. And she has been trying to warn me about Emily for months." "How do you know if she doesn't speak?" "The same way you know what your brother means when he cannot find the words." Gyuseok's voice was very quiet now. She speaks with her hands, with her face, with the angle of her body and the direction of her gaze. Most people think she is simply old and silent, but I have watched her for years. I know she's trying to tell me something, and I think you might be able to understand her better than I can. Selena thought about Marcus. The years of learning his language, a language that existed in the spaces between words. The way she had trained herself to read the smallest movements, the faintest shifts in expression. Why me? Because you see what other people miss. He leaned forward slightly, and his good hand moved across the table until his fingertips were almost touching hers. Almost. Not quite. You saw the water damage that 3 building inspectors missed. You saw that I needed help before I asked. You looked at Emily Mendez and saw exactly what she was, when everyone else saw only what she wanted them to see. That's not special. That's just paying attention. Selena.
The way he said her name made something shift low in her chest. Paying attention is the rarest thing in the world. She did not pull her hand away. The next morning, Emily struck. Selena arrived at the Miri Tower to find her access badge deactivated. The security guards would not meet her eyes. The shift supervisor was not in his office. When she finally reached the HR department on the 14th floor, a woman with a clipboard told her, with practiced regret, that her position had been eliminated due to restructuring. Restructuring, Selena repeated. Effective immediately. Your final check will be mailed to your residence of record. She was walked out of the building by 2 security officers. They took her badge, her card keys, the small locker where she had kept an extra pair of shoes and a photograph of Marcus. They escorted her through the lobby while the morning staff watched, and they deposited her on the sidewalk outside the Miri Tower like she was debris being cleared from a construction site. The whole thing took 11 minutes. She stood on the sidewalk and looked up at 52 floors of glass and steel, at the building she had cleaned for 2 years, at the life she had built in this country one shift at a time. Gone. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she did not recognize. 48 hours was generous. This is what happens when you choose wrong. You have 7 days to leave the country before I contact immigration. Selena read it twice. Then she put her phone in her pocket and started walking. She did not know where she was going until she arrived. The subway took her south, then a bus, then another subway, and when she finally emerged into the afternoon light, she was standing outside a Buddhist monastery on the south coast, near a fishing village where the air smelled of salt and the sea stretched out gray and endless toward the horizon. She had never been here before, but she knew, without knowing how, that this was where she needed to be. The meditation hall was cool and quiet, with wooden floors worn smooth by decades of footsteps. At the far end, near a window that looked out over the water, an old woman sat very still with her hands folded in her lap, Gyuseok's grandmother. Selena approached slowly. She did not speak. She simply sat down across from the old woman and waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the grandmother's hands began to move, small movements, precise movements. The angle of her fingers, the tension in her wrists, the direction of her gaze as she looked toward the door and then back at Selena, a language without words, spoken by someone who had chosen silence and learned to make the silence say everything she needed it to say. Selena watched. She did not understand all of it, but she understood enough. Emily, watch. Something hidden. The 41st floor. And something else. Something the old woman repeated 3 times with increasing urgency, her hands shaping the same gesture over and over. Tonight. Go. See. Selena bowed to the grandmother. Then she caught the next bus back to Seoul. New names, established facts. The service entrance on the 41st floor had not been rekeyed. Selena discovered this at 11:47 p.m., standing in a stairwell she had climbed 41 times before, with a mop bucket and aching shoulders. The door should have rejected her. Her access had been revoked 9 hours earlier. But the lock was mechanical, not electronic, and the key she had copied 6 months ago for emergencies still turned in the cylinder with a soft click. She did not let herself think about what she was doing. She did not let herself think about the 7 days she had left in this country, or the visa that was already compromised, or the fact that she was breaking into a building she no longer had any right to enter. The grandmother's hands had been clear. Tonight. Go. See. So she went. The wine cellar was dark, except for a single emergency light near the far wall, casting long shadows between the temperature-controlled racks. Selena moved slowly, her shoes silent on the polished floor, her body remembering every inch of this space from the nights she had cleaned it. 3rd rack from the right, northeast corner. The water damage she had pointed out to a man whose name she did not yet know. Emily Mendez was crouched in that corner, She had her back to the door. Her gray silk blouse was smudged with something dark. In her hands was a small case, open, and she was lifting something out of it with the careful precision of someone who had practiced this movement many times. A syringe. Selena stopped breathing. Emily reached toward the wall, toward the wooden rack that held bottles worth more than Selena's annual salary, and she pressed the needle into the cork of a bottle on the third shelf. The plunger moved slowly. Whatever was in that syringe was entering the wine drop by careful drop, and Emily's face in profile held the particular concentration of someone completing a task they had planned for months. "That's the 1982 Margot," Selena said. Emily's entire body went rigid. She did not turn. She did not move. For 4 seconds, she simply stayed frozen, the syringe still half depressed, her back a straight line of arrested motion. Then, very slowly, she stood. "Miss Clay." Her voice was perfectly controlled. Only someone who had spent 9 years reading silence would have heard the fracture underneath it. "You should not be here. Neither should you. Not with that." Emily turned. The syringe was still in her hand. Her face had rearranged itself into something that might have been calm if you did not look too closely. "You misunderstand what you are seeing." "I don't think I do." "This is a preservation treatment. The bottles require maintenance. I am simply ensuring that the collection remains in proper condition while Mr. Gye is indisposed." Selena looked at her, at the expensive blouse and the careful makeup and the hands that had just injected something into a bottle of wine that was almost certainly meant for a specific person to drink. Who was that bottle meant for? Emily's composure cracked. Just for a moment. Just enough. "The board," she said. "The board has a meeting tomorrow evening." Gyuseok always served the 1982 Margot when he wanted to celebrate a victory. When I announced his permanent removal, I thought it would be appropriate to continue the tradition. And what happens when they drink it? Nothing that concerns you. The door behind Selena opened. Gyuseok Gye walked in with 3 men in dark suits behind him. His face was very still. His right hand was steady at his side. No tremor visible. Nothing but controlled precision in every line of his body. Behind him, a 4th figure. An older man in a traditional Korean hanbok, his expression grave. "Mr. Park," Emily said. Her voice had changed, lighter now, surprised. "I was not expecting you this evening." "Chairman Park," Gyuseok corrected quietly, "of the parent board. The one Emily did not manage to convince when she called her emergency meeting. The one who has been waiting for proof that her removal of me was motivated by something other than corporate governance." Emily's hand tightened around the syringe. "This is absurd. I'm conducting routine maintenance on a valuable collection. There is nothing improper about my presence here." Gyuseok looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and very precise. "You arrived at 11:23 p.m., 24 minutes before Selena entered through the service door. You used a key that was reported stolen 3 months ago. You brought with you a case containing 6 syringes of a compound that our laboratory identified this afternoon as a slow-acting cardiac stimulant. In sufficient doses, it causes heart failure that appears natural. You have injected that compound into 4 bottles, all of which were selected for service at tomorrow's board dinner." Emily's face went white. "The board dinner, where my permanent removal was to be announced," Gyuseok continued. "The board dinner after which 3 members who opposed your leadership would have consumed wine meant to kill them." Selena watched something collapse behind Emily's eyes. The composure. The practiced warmth. The careful architecture of a woman who had believed she could not be caught because she had been too careful, too thorough, too smart. "She should be arrested," one of the suited men said. "This is attempted murder, multiple counts." "Yes," Gyuseok said. His eyes moved to Selena. "It is." The room went very quiet. Selena thought about the $200,000, about the visa,
about standing on the sidewalk outside the Mire Tower while security guards walked her out like debris. She thought about every moment Emily Mendez had looked through her like she was nothing, like she was furniture, like she was not worth cataloging at all. She could destroy this woman. Right here, right now. Gyuseok had given her the power to do it. All she had to do was nod. "Call the police," Selena said. Emily's head snapped toward her. "Not your security, not your lawyers, the actual police." Selena met Gyuseok's eyes, and something passed between them that did not need words. "I want her arrested. I want her charged. I want her to stand trial in a Korean court and answer for what she did. Not because you have power, because the law has power, because that is how justice works." Gyuseok was very still. "You could take everything from her tonight," he said quietly. "I could make that happen." Say the word, and she never works again, never holds a position again, never walks through a door in Seoul without people knowing what she tried to do. "I know you could." "Then why not?" Selena looked at Emily Mendez, at the gray silk blouse and the expensive heels and the face of a woman who had underestimated her completely. A woman who had seen a cleaner in a uniform and decided she was nothing. "Because that is not who I am." She turned back to Gyuseok. "I did not let you in because I wanted revenge on the people who hurt me. I let you in because my grandmother taught me that a person's worth is measured by what they do when no one is watching. And right now, no one is watching but us." The 41st floor was very quiet. Somewhere in the distance, muffled by glass and concrete, fireworks cracked over the river. Emily Mendez stood between them with the syringe still in her hand, caught in the freeze frame of her own guilt, and Selena felt something shift in her chest that had nothing to do with victory. It felt like choosing. Gyuseok pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "This is Gyuseok. I need to report an attempted poisoning. 41st floor, Mire Tower, Sinsadong. Yes, I will wait." He ended the call. Then he looked at Selena, and his damaged hand lifted slightly from his side, and the tremor was visible now, but he did not hide it. "Thank you," he said. Emily was still holding the syringe when the police arrived 14 minutes after Gyuseok's call. They took Emily Mendez out of the wine cellar in handcuffs, her gray silk blouse still smudged, her face holding the particular blankness of someone who had finally run out of moves. She did not look at Selena as she passed. She did not look at anyone at all. Chairman Park stayed for another hour, speaking quietly with Gyuseok in Korean, while Selena stood by the window and watched fireworks bloom over the Han River in colors she could not name. When everyone was gone, Gyuseok crossed the room to where she stood. He did not speak. He simply reached past her to the rack behind the window, pulled out a bottle that Emily had not touched, and poured 2 glasses of something dark and old and worth more than Selena wanted to think about. He handed her one. His right hand was shaking. He did not hide it. "You came back," he said. "I never left." "You could have. After everything she did to you. After everything I brought into your life. You could have taken the money and gone home." "Home is not a place," Selena said. "My grandmother used to say that. Home is what you decide to protect." Gyuseok looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out with his trembling hand and touched her face. Just once. His fingertips resting against her cheek for 3 seconds before he let them fall. "I'm going to ask you something," he said. "And I need you to know that whatever you answer, I will not ask again." "Ask? Stay. Not on my floor, not as a guest. Stay because I cannot imagine this life without you in it. Stay because you saw me when I had nothing, and you did not look away." Selena thought about Trime, about her grandmother's kitchen and the women who came through it and the lesson she had learned before she knew it was a lesson. "Yes," she said. The fireworks were still going when he kissed her. She understood now that power was not about what you could take, that justice was not about revenge, that the hardest thing in the world was choosing dignity when destruction was easier, The right choice never felt triumphant. It just felt true. 2 glasses on a table, 41 floors above Seoul. A man whose hands would never be steady. A woman who had decided to stay. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and tell me what you would have done with that syringe in your hand if it had been you standing there. I read every single one. If you are new here, subscribe and turn on notifications. And I promise the next story will be even harder to walk away from. Thank you for watching until the very end. I will see you in the next one.